Whale Watchers. Precious finished drying her long black hair. She quickly created one braid, which she wound around and pinned at the nape of her neck. She was late. It was almost daybreak, and she should be on the dock, waiting to board the boat. She tiptoed downstairs and grabbed a thermos of tea her dad had left for her. She stuffed a bun in her mouth as she laced her shoes. Jean, her 16-year-old brother, and Raoul, 3 years older than Jean, had summer jobs. She was finally going to work, too. This was her first day, and she didn't want to be late. Her family ran a whale-watching fleet of 5 boats that sailed out of Lunenburg, Nova Scotia. After Precious turned 13, her dad had agreed to give her a job on a boat. She had helped her mom in the store, and she'd sold and collected tickets. She'd cleaned the boats after all the tourists left, but she wanted, eventually, to be her dad's partner. While her friends read novels, she devoured books about mechanics and navigation. While her friends read fashion magazines, she read magazines about whales, engines, and power boats. Out of breath, she waited beside the Sea Princess as the sun washed the sky with red. Captain John appeared. Smiling broadly, he said, "A new crew member, I see. Let's get working." Precious followed him on board. She went with Robbie, the first mate, to help the passengers board. Most passengers were only a voice that said, "Good morning," or a hand that grabbed Precious for support. Some passengers stood out. One older woman with a cumbersome leg brace glanced at her as Precious helped her. "Thank you, dear," she said, smiling. The man with her grumbled, "Can't you keep the boat still?" as he stepped on board. There's always one, Precious thought. She kept smiling. Generally, people were excited. As Old Grumpy was asking when they were going to start, the last line was cast off and stowed away. The Sea Princess pulled away from the dock. Precious started the tape that welcomed them aboard and listed the safety features of the boat. It gave the location of the washrooms and snack bar and introduced the crew. Then she picked up the microphone. "Welcome. My name is Precious. I will be telling you about whales and letting you know when they are sighted. The right side of the boat, as you face the front or bow, is the starboard side. The left side is the port. Think of the boat as being in the center of an old-fashioned clock with hands on it. Then call out the position of any whales you see. For instance, whales at 2 o'clock means they are on the starboard or right side of the boat, just ahead of the middle. If you have any questions, just ask Robbie or myself." "Whales at 8 o'clock!" Captain John's voice boomed over the sound system. The boat slowed and turned toward the sighting. Passengers surged to the port side. Their voices were thick with anticipation. 2 blows were sighted in quick succession. The hump of a whale diving into the deep appeared near the other 2 whales. Then the sea was empty. The boat slowed, and Precious asked the passengers to keep looking for a black tail to break the surface of the bay, or search for the spew of spray as the whale surfaced to blow out air. She assured them the whales would reappear. Someone called, "10 o'clock!" For the next 10 minutes, the whales performed. They surfaced and flicked their tails. They blew, took air, and dived in different directions. One arched right out of the water. Just as Old Grumpy asked why we couldn't get closer, one surfaced right beside the boat. Then, some of the kids complained we were too close and should back off. Precious thought as if we were directing the show. Robbie motioned Precious to stop her commentary. She fell silent and watched the whales and the tourists. Most tourists fell under the spell of the mammoth mammals. The whales, huge legendary beasts, were at home in the sea. The sea was their world in a way we would never understand. One teenager, standing beside Preschel, not taking her eyes from the sea, asked, "Are we interfering with their lives?" Her friend asked, "Do we harm them?" Preschel assured them that the boats stayed back and didn't impede their feeding or traveling. Old Grumpy's wife expressed the feelings of most of the tourists. "Oh, Wayne," she said, touching her husband's arm, "we are so privileged to be in the company of these magnificent creatures." For once, at the end of the week, the whole family sat down to dinner together. Jean spoke up. We had one customer in the store that was really unreasonable. He wanted 7-grain bread and nothing else would do. We must have 20 varieties, but nothing suited him. It was my fault, of course. "Sometimes it's hard to remain polite," Raoul commented. "In the office, I have several bosses. Like customers, they're always right." Dad jumped into the conversation. "I'm told Preschel is excellent with the tourists that are hard to please." He smiled at his daughter. Preschel smiled and whispered, "Thank you." She told them of Old Grumpy, the well-dressed man on her first trip. Her mother said, "Well, Father, I think Preschel has a job for the summers throughout her school years." Her dad replied, "She certainly is welcome to one until she's finished university." "But I don't need university. I want to help you run the company," Preschel blurted out. There was a silence. Her brothers grinned. Her mother looked at her father. Her father was angry at her daring, astonished at her decision, and proud of her determination. Both parents said together, "You must go to university." Her father said, "All my children will get a university degree. A woman cannot run a company such as ours." Jean interjected, "Dad, I bet your father had that exact same tone of voice when he declared you couldn't immigrate to Canada. Didn't he say, 'No son of mine could leave India and carry tourists on boats. Boats are meant for fishing'?" Preschel is only 13. Raoul jumped into the conversation. "When I was young, I wanted to be a firefighter. Let her grow up before we fight this fight, if there is to be a fight." Preschel knew she could not fight her parents on the issue of education, and she stated, "I will go to university. Mom is right. I have a great thirst for knowledge, and I seem to be able to retain what I learn." After a pause, she continued, in a voice startling like her mother's, "But I will then come back and help run the company."